this afternoon. I just celebrated. My clean date is September the 18th, 1998. I thank God for this program. I had a busy morning, and I was coming up, and I drive fast anyway, and I was on the toll road, and I was going 100 miles an hour. It felt pretty good. I was praying on my way up here, and I was asking God to keep me safe and to make me invisible from state troopers. I came up over this hump at 100 miles an hour, and the state trooper was coming down from a little maintenance garage he was on the entrance ramp to the freeway in front of me. And of course, I slammed on the brakes, and he pulled over and stopped. So I thank God for keeping me invisible on my way here, full speed ahead. And I was praying, because I've been here before, and I really didn't know exactly how to get here. I was just kind of trusting God that I'd be able to find it again. And I had been on the computer at home trying to figure out where I was going. I wasn't exactly sure, and I hadn't prayed about directions, but I got a phone call on the way here, and somebody gave me directions here. And that's one of the beautiful things about being here and seeing you all, because there's so many friends here and so many familiar faces, and you guys have been giving me directions since I walked in the door. And I appreciate it. I love Narcotics Anonymous. I love this new way of life. And I was thinking that, one of the greatest gifts that I got here after being here and staying here for a while is that you guys have given me the gift of inventory. I take my own inventory. And it doesn't mean that I stopped taking your inventory. What it means is that your inventory, it don't matter to me anymore. I'm trying not to use the word good and bad and should and shouldn't. And I'm just trying to deal with what is and be okay in the world today. That's one of the beautiful things for me about Narcotics Anonymous is that I'm okay. When I was young, I was never okay. I just was never okay. I didn't fit in. I didn't belong. I felt like people didn't like me. I felt like I didn't have a good place in the world. I didn't understand what was going on in my life. I didn't fit in. I was never okay until I got here and began to work the program. And doing this program, doing these steps, has left me living in a place today where I can get up in the morning and I'm okay. I feel pretty good. I feel like I fit in. I feel like I have a purpose in my life today. And it's all as a result of coming here and working the program. Full speed ahead, I'm going to talk about how the STEP process has worked for me. I'm one of them people that only went to rehab one time. I started using when I was 10 years old in 1970. And I was a pothead for 20 years. The only thing that ever cured me of smoking pot was smoking crack. I had some years of being a wino in there. I was an alcoholic. I loved, we drank Mad Dog, we drank Tiger Rose, we drank Thunderbird. The only wine made without grapes. We drank a lot of it. We drank for effect. I didn't care what it tasted like. I just wanted to get drunk. And once I started smoking crack, my life took a serious downward turn. And I ended up running a crack house for a few years, and I sold some crack to an undercover police officer. I went to jail for the first time in the spring of '97. I got out of jail and became suicidal, and I didn't have the courage to take my own life. I wanted to die and couldn't figure out how to do it. And so they had told me if I wanted help, all I had to do was ask. And I made that phone call. They had me in rehab the next day. I only went to rehab the one time. I got out. I did not stay clean. I had gotten maybe 30 days. I always say that I worked all 13 steps in rehab. I knew it all. I had me a woman I was never going to use again. I was ready to save the whole world. And somebody called me up and asked me to give him some crack. And I told that kid, look, I don't smoke no more. I'm in Narcotics Anonymous. It was a Monday night because I was going to wash one. I said, just give me $10, I'll hook you up. So the kid gave me $110, took me to the crack man's house. I put that $10 in my pocket. When the crack man gave me them rocks, I got my first understanding of why you use that word powerless. Because I couldn't help myself. And I broke something off like I had always done. And I went to an MA meeting. If you ever get a chance to go to an MA meeting with rocks in your pocket, don't do it. It was the longest hour of my life. But I went on the news and opened the door, and I started that process again. And I was in and out, getting white key tags, in and out of jail. And I still remember that the first time what happened was I joined a group, and I had gotten in touch with the power of group therapy. I hadn't really bought into this. I had bought into being with you. And the counselor asked me my clean date. And I was honest. And I still remember the look in her eyes when she said, Doug, you use. And I'm like, yeah, it wasn't a big deal to me. I wasn't done. And she said, we're going to have to throw you out of the group. And that was a big deal to me. And I went to the meeting that night and I shared about it. And I didn't cry, but my voice broke. I was emotional. I didn't want to be thrown out of the group. And after the meeting, there was a guy who I knew he had some time, and he was sitting off by himself. The only reason I went over there was because he was smoking Marlboros, and I was sick and tired of bumming generic cigarettes. But I walked over and asked him for a cigarette, and he said to me, so you haven't surrendered yet, huh? And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, maybe you didn't relapse. He said, you got to have some recovery before you can relapse. And I didn't get it. I didn't understand, but his words stuck with me. And I was in and out of here for another year, in and out of jail. And my probation officer picked me up September 18th of 98. She had asked me for a urine. I was 150 pounds. And she took one look at me and asked for urine. And of course it was hot. And she told me, she said, look, you either got to go back to rehab or you got to go to jail. One of the amazing things that's happened to me around here is I've had instances where things came out of my mouth and I didn't know where they came from. That was one of the times. But she said, you either got to go to rehab or you got to go to jail. And I looked at her and I said, I ain't going to rehab. And I didn't know she was serious. She put me back in jail. So I always say that my clean date and my surrender date are not the same date. Because I know the day I went into jail. I know the day I got out of jail. But all them days in jail all look the same. And I had been there for a few days, and I saw cars going up the street that looked just like a car that had belonged to somebody that I was coughing from, and I was triggered. And I had that sudden, total, overwhelming urge to get it in. My stomach started to flip. My heart started to race. And I had that moment of clarity that we talked about. Because I realized that every other time in my life that I had ever felt that way, damn it, I used. And there was nothing I could do to get out. The jail cell door was locked. And you guys had told me that if I wasn't praying, I wasn't staying. I didn't know anything about prayer, but I dropped on my knees in that cell and I called out to God and I said, I want to live clean. I want to try something different, and I can't do it on my own. And I'm going to need your help. And I always say this, that I didn't see no great white light. I did not see Jesus Christ. The jail cell door did not pop open. But when I got up off my knees, I was free. And I've never found it necessary to use since that moment. I've been clean. And one of the things that helped me Because I was in and out of here. I heard you guys. I didn't know how to apply what you were telling me. But one of the things that helped me was you guys had told me that I had to work the first 3 steps every day. And I bought that. I had a basic text in jail. I was reading the book every day. I was praying every day. I believe I was working my first 3 steps every day. I didn't have a sponsor yet. But when I got out of jail, one of the guys that was carrying a message into jail had been that same guy that had asked me about surrender. And when I got out, I wanted to do this thing, and I ran into him at a meeting, and I asked him to sponsor me. And what he said to me was, he said, look, he said, I'll sponsor you, but only if you're serious. He said, please don't waste my time. I still got a resentment over that. But that guy sponsored me for 10 years. And I want to share this with you too, talking about full speed ahead. The first time I called him, he said to me, Doug, there's 2 things that'll get you out. I said, what's that? He said, finances and romances. I said, well, you're too late. He said, what, you got money troubles? I said, no. He said, well, she in the program? I said, yes. He said, just remember, any woman in the program is at least as sick as you are, and maybe even sicker. And so, I remember that. And during the course of that conversation, he also asked me what step I was on. And I told him why I thought I was working the first 3 steps. And he told me, I agree, start writing your 4th step. Now, I was dating this chick that I had met the day I got out of jail at a meeting. And I knew it wasn't right. She was like 10, 12 years younger than me. She had a couple of little kids. She was feeling a need for me. I had keys to her car and keys to her crib. I was living in a homeless shelter. So it was working real good for me up here. And it was working real good for me down here. But in here, I knew I didn't belong with that chick. Right? And so, I had maybe gone a year clean. And she had said to me one night, she questioned me. And I'd have been okay if she had let it alone. But she kept asking me questions. She was questioning me about some chick that I was friends with, but that I wasn't attracted to. But she was jealous, and she kept asking me questions, and I not only suffer from addiction, but I suffer from rageaholicism. And so she asked me one time too many, and I lost control. I didn't put my hands on that woman, but I tore up her house. And I performed, and I actually scared myself. I know I scared her. I can still remember her standing at the top of the stairs crying and begging me not to leave, which didn't make no sense to me either. But it was scary, because it was a dangerous situation. I had lost control. And the next morning, I called my sponsor and told him what happened. And he said to me, Doug, he said, do you know what you got to do? And I said, no. And he said, did you play a part in what happened? And I said, yes. And he said, well, do you know what the 10th step says? And I said, no. And he said, well, you go to them damn meetings every day. You ought to know what the 10th step says. And he recited it for me, that we continue to take personal inventory, and when we're wrong, promptly admit it. He said, now do you know what you got to do? And I said, no. And he said, well, if you were wrong, you got to admit it. And I learned a valuable lesson that day, because she was at work. And he might have told me that at 8 or 9 in the morning. And I spent the whole day thinking about admitting I was wrong. And it was a long, uncomfortable day. And when she walked in the door, I apologized. I told her I was wrong. I was out of line. And I was going to do my best to never let it happen again. And I learned a valuable lesson that day. I learned it's a lot easier for me to admit I'm wrong than for me to think about admitting I'm wrong. Probably plays a part. And I also learned that I didn't have to be on a 10th step to apply that principle. And so he had told me to start working on my 4th step. And I'm going to confess, full speed ahead, I'm going to confess that I joked that it took me a year to find a pen, and a year to find paper, and a year to write. But I wasn't ready to work a 5th step until I had almost 4 years clean. And what happened to me was that there was a guy in the rooms who was about Marcus's size. It may be bigger. And we had gotten into a beef. And I'm not necessarily afraid of him, but I'm no fool. I wasn't going to hit him. And so we went back and forth, and I didn't know how to approach the guy. And one night at a meeting, he got a key tag, and I got up and I hugged him. And after I hugged him, I thought everything was okay. I thought that had made it right. And after the meeting out in the parking lot, he said, "Come here, Doug. I want to talk to you." I said, "Yeah, what's up, brother?" I thought he was going to apologize because I was right, he was wrong. And what he said to me was, he said, "Don't you ever hug me again." He said, "Don't you ever touch me again." He said, "Don't you even ever look at me again." Now, most people that would have said that to me, I'd have smacked them right in the mouth. But that guy was too big to hit. So I went home all jammed up, praying, "God, what do I do?" And I got an answer from God. And he told me, "Work the fifth step." I have been carrying that guy around. I have been carrying a lot of people around. And the fifth step showed me how to put all that weight that I carried in here down. And I'll say this, that what happened was, as soon as I got done with the fifth step, I had a guy in my life who would bug me. And I love this guy. He taught me the program, and he would always say to me, "What step are you on?" And I'd tell him I was about to start 67, and he would say, "Hurry up and work all 12 steps and dance on step 11. He would always say it twice. "Dance on step 11. And he pushed me to work 6 and 7. I would call my sponsor about the 6th and 7th step, and my sponsor would hold me. He wouldn't let me move on. We'd talk about it, but he wouldn't let me move on. And then one day we were talking about 6 and 7, and he said to me, "Doug," he said, "look," he said, "what do you think about the 7th step?" And I told him that I might be dyslexic. And he said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I'm thinking where it says, humbly ask God to remove these defects. I've been humbly asking Doug to remove them." And that's when he moved me on to the 8th step. And what I learned from working my 8th step was I would write down names, and every time I'd write down a name, I'd think to myself, "That son of a gun deserved it." And I kept doing that and doing that and doing that until it occurred to me that nobody had ever deserved to be treated the way I treated them, and that I didn't deserve to be treated the way I treated myself. And when I learned to forgive myself, it became real easy for me to forgive other people. And so I learned how to practice forgiveness. I learned how to incorporate these principles. One of the beautiful things that's happened to me is working in 11th step, because I'm living in a quiet place today. I've learned the gift of developing a quiet mind. I'm not saying that the thoughts have turned off. My mind still races, but I don't pay attention to them no more. A lot of what's going on in my head, it's not thinking, it's just thoughting. And I don't let it control me anymore. And I want to share this before I close, because I've been thinking about cool. I didn't know about full speed ahead, and I want to say this about cool, because it was another one of them spiritual awakenings I got when I first got here. I was at the Wednesday night meeting in Washington, and it was a room half this size, and there was more people in there than that. And it was one of them hot August days where it was burning up in there. Yeah, it was burning up. And the guy wasn't talking to me. He was talking to somebody in front of me. He told him, "Turn the fan on." Well, the guy reached up and turned the fan on, but it didn't come on. And I'm sitting there sweating, burning up. And I was thinking back then, I was thinking about something else. But it occurred to me after sitting there for a little while that I looked down at the cord. The fan wasn't plugged in. So I reached up, plugged the fan in, it started working. And it cooled me down. It was a spiritual awakening for me, because I don't necessarily know what's going on behind the walls. The lights are on. I know I got to stay plugged in if I want to have power, if I want to stay cool. I'm going to stay plugged into this program. Thanks for that.